Tadparam Paryaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruhu Prachodayate Om. Om Yoga Maharshi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam. Welcome to yet another Scintillating Saturdays. And today we are going to be taking a look at a very important topic, the base of the Yoga Sutra itself, the Yoga Darshana itself, the Yoga Drishti, the yogic perspective itself. And this is the Chitta and its Vrittis. So we have two terms to start off with. One is Chitta and the second term is Vritti. The term Chitta is normally translated as the mind stuff. So you say, what is this mind stuff? You have heard about mind. What is mind stuff? Well, it is that aspect of your mind that is stuffed with all the memories of this incarnation and incarnations that have preceded it. So the Chitta is the storehouse of memories. Now when we describe the Chitta, we need to understand that the Chitta is one of the four internal instruments that make up what is known as mind in the Indian culture. This is a concept that is passed in different ways through different traditions. And normally you find an understanding that what we know of as the human mind, often referred to as Chit, that this human mind is not just one entity, but it is having multiple compartments. It is having multiple cogs in the wheel. So one aspect of this mind that we are looking at is the Chitta, which is the memory bank, the mind stuff, and this essentially constitutes our subconscious, unconscious aspects of what is happening in our mind. So the subconscious, unconscious. The other day someone said, what is the difference between them? Well, if you understand the human mind through a pictorial metaphor of being the water in a lake, the bottom of the lake is the unconscious. The water in the lake is the subconscious. So the unconscious is the bottom. The water itself is the subconscious. And the surface of the water that you see externally is the conscious. So you have the unconscious that communicates with the subconscious. So the base of the lake and the water in the lake are constantly interacting with each other. Similarly, from the unconscious, some thoughts come to this subconscious, and from the subconscious, they go down into the deep unconscious. So there's this constant interaction. And the subconscious and the conscious, what is at the surface and what is in the water, is constantly interacting. So there is an interaction between subconscious and unconscious on one side, unconscious and subconscious on the other. Unconscious, conscious, unconscious, subconscious. subconscious, conscious. There is this interaction. But what we need to understand is the conscious and the unconscious are so far removed that they often don't communicate. So it is the subconscious that is the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious. So the unconscious and the subconscious, which are constantly interacting with each other, they are basically what we would understand as the Chitta. The second aspect of the mind, these internal processes, Anta, Karana. Anta means inside, Karana is the doers, the internal action processes. So the Chitta, the unconscious, subconscious, you then have the Manas, which is the conscious. This is the conscious mind where we understand what is happening around us and we are interacting with this. Remember, the surface of the water is interacting with the rest of the world. That interaction is there. So the conscious mind is what we call Manas. And it is said that the human being, Manushya, Manav, is endowed with this Manas and hence becomes a Manushya. So a human being is endowed with consciousness. So you have the Chitta, the Manas. You then have what is called the Buddhi. The Buddhi is the higher aspect of the mind that is capable of making a choice. It has the discerning ability. It is the discriminating intellect which can differentiating, discriminating, discerning, all these are different terms brought in play here, which can make a choice because it is coming from above. So this is like the drone above the lake. So in the drone that is flying above the lake, you get the bigger picture of the lake and hence you can choose what you want to do with the conscious. So the Buddhi enables us to make a choice about the consciousness. So it is quite easy. You choose to see something, you don't want to see it, you close your eyes or you turn away. You can choose and you can work with your consciousness. But the subconscious, unconscious is much, much deeper. And because the subconscious, unconscious is deeper, the Buddhi struggles to control the subconscious, unconscious, because remember, the drone is up there in the sky and it is struggling to get a perspective of what's at the bottom of the lake. It can understand the surface of the lake. It can maybe understand a little bit if the water is clear of the water also. But the very base of the lake is often very difficult for the drone to understand, for the Buddhi to understand. This is why in yoga it is not manovritti nirodha. We are not worried about the stilling, the cessation, the control, the transcendence of the whirlpools or the fluctuations or the waves of the mind, but of this subconscious, unconscious mind. Many people have not understood this clear-cut demarcation that is given, and this is why my Guru Father Swamiji, Geetananda Giri, he was one of the few who understood this. He understood this very thin line of demarcation that exists. So we said Chitta, then we have Manas, then we have Buddhi, and then who is the guy operating the drone? There is somebody operating that drone, right? Ahankara. So the Ahankara is the drone master. The Ahankara is the drone master, the Buddhi is the drone, the Manas is the surface of the lake, and the Chitta is the water in the lake going all the way down to its interaction with the base of the lake. The drone master is involved in the choice making. That is why the drone master and the drone, they work as a team. No drone, the drone master cannot do anything. No master, the drone cannot do anything. And this is why the interaction between Buddhi and Ahankara is a very vital aspect of the power of choice. Because when the Ahankara is pure, your choice will be towards the evolutionary journey, upliftment, for the sake of we. And when the ahankara is impure, it will become me, 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 me. And then it's all about me and you get bound. So the pure and the impure ahankara are part of this whole process. So I have given you the structure. You have the Chitta, Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara. When we talk about this neurologically through the nervous system, I like to say that the spinal cord and brainstem, they are the physical correlates of your Chitta. The brainstem and the spinal cord. It is very, very beautiful when you think about it, because the spinal cord is the most primitive aspect of our nervous system, and the brainstem, that is having the seed of the survival instinct. This is why the brainstem takes care of all your survival mechanisms. You can breathe, you can digest your food, and your heart will beat if your brainstem and spinal cord are there. That is why when we say somebody is brain dead, what we mean is the brainstem is not able to function on its own anymore. And it's at that point that you say we cannot do anything about the person. Brain dead doesn't mean the whole brain. Once the brainstem goes out, it means you're out. It is the part that is the deepest, most primitive aspect, the cerebrum. The most the most ancient part of your nervous system, spinal cord and brainstem. And this is the physical correlate to the Chitta. And this is why when we are caught in the Chitta, we are more reactionary. We are more reflexive. As we move into the Manas, we start to have a chance of responsiveness. And it is when we come into the Buddhi that the power of responsibility comes into us. But again, that responsibility will depend on the Ahankara. The Manas for me is very much the internal aspect of the brain. The emotional aspects, the limbic system, the basal ganglia, all of these regions are very much related to even the insula. All of these type of areas, I say, they are very much related to that mammalian part of your brain, which is very, very emotional. And this is very much part of the Manas. When we talk about the Buddhi and the Ahankara, it is the prefrontal cortex, the neocortex. The neocortex is where the power of choice and the individuality comes in. And you start to actually have a choice to grow. And the prefrontal cortex is sort of the physical correlate to those. Today the topic is Chitta. So the Chitta, the subconscious, unconscious activities of the mind stuff, which stores all the memories of this lifetime and others. Aneka Janma. It is storing. So what is happening is these memories are so deep in us, the reptilian part of our nervous system, that most of the time our activities are based on this pattern. It's the tried and tested tool for millions of years. Now what happens in yoga? Yoga says you have been born as a human being. You are to overcome the subhuman tendencies, manifest the human, develop the humane, and ultimately grow into your own divinity. This is the journey. Restrict the subhuman tendencies. Transcend them. Get a hold on them. Start to manifest the human, Manushya. Then you grow into the humane qualities where the higher aspects come in. And then you manifest your divinity. Because we are all the divine with amnesia. Ishvara plus Klesha Karma is equal to us. And that is why the journey is to get rid of the Klesha Karma. So that we once again, we are Ishvara itself. The Chitta is very happy where it is. The Chitta is very happy doing what it's doing. It doesn't want to change. Millions of years it's done it that way. It survived. It survived by killing others. It survived by eating others. Dog eat dog, rat race, snake eat rat, bird eats snake, something else eats, bird. We have got used to how have we survived for millions of years. Well, the Chitta and its activities have enabled us to survive till now. That is why the Abhinivesha Klesha, which is the survival instinct, is very, very related to the Chitta. The Chitta and the Abhinivesha, they go together. So one is feeding the other. Abhinivesha feeds Chitta, Chitta feeds Abhinivesha. And they are very strong. They have been partnering for millions of years. And suddenly this Manas and Buddhi come in and you say, I want to change the way I live. I want to be a better person. I want to manifest my inherent divinity. You think they're going to be happy about it? You think the Chitta is going to be happy that you want to evolve? No. No, not at all. I remember as a kid in school, I thought, if you were good, everybody would love you. Trying to be good as a kid, there's a huge group who hates you. Huh? Why do you want to be good? Why do you want to do the right thing when the rest of us are like this? Be one with us. It's called the negative peer pressure. The Chitta is constantly exerting a lot of negative peer pressure, saying, be like us. Have fun, make merry, dance, have fun. Why are you? Huh? Why are you even thinking of that nonsense which may not exist? Huh? Jonathan Livingston Seagull. You're just a seagull. You don't fly high. He has to overcome his Chitta and Abhinivesha bullies in order to fly high. The Chitta has been around so long. It's so powered by the Abhinivesha. The Abhinivesha Klesha is so strong, even the most wise people are caught by it. Even the wisest of people, Vidusho api samarudaha Abhinivesha Klesha. Even the wisest of people get stuck with it because, remember the drone and drone master up in the sky, the bottom of the lake, the demons within surface. Hands come up from the bottom and catch you and drag you down. That's why the Chitta keeps on putting up what are called Vikshepa, the obstacles. It keeps on putting up obstacles so that you will give up trying and you'll come back and sink to the bottom. It keeps on trying. Why? Because it's in its comfort zone. Its comfort zone is Tamasika. The Tamasika comfort zone of the Chitta doesn't want you to move through the Rajasika, which is through the water, to the surface and then fly high in the Satvika. It doesn't want that. It feels threatened. Then we talk about the Vrittis. Vrittis are described as modulation, activities, waves. So you find people describing Maharishi Patanjali's statement, the second statement of the Yoga Sutra, where he says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the whirlpools of the subconscious, unconscious mind. Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The term Nirodha refers to stilling, cessation, or transcendence. You go beyond. Athita. Chitta Vritti Atita, that would be a nice. Chitta Atita would be a nice one actually. You are transcending. You are outgrowing it. Because as long as the Chitta Vrittis are active, you are caught in them. You are caught in the web. So you have to outgrow them, you have to transcend them, you have to still them if you are to be established in your own essential nature. Maharishi Patanjali says, as long as you are caught up with them, Vrittis arupyam itaratra, you will be caught up with them and you will identify with the Vrittis, hence you lose yourself. Vrittis arupyam itaratra, the Vrittis arupam. So the form of the Vritti you will identify, which means you have forgotten who you are. It is like all of us. We are so much suffering from the mal-identification syndrome that we think we have our name, we think we have our religion, our nationality. We identify with it and then we kill others for it. For this false sense of identity. We identify with our job title. We identify with our role in a family. We identify with the Vrittis. Now these Vrittis, the activities of the mind stuff, of the Chitta. As I said, the Chitta is very, very deep. The Chitta is very, very deep. And so, what it does is that from below it pulls you down. It's not pushing you down from above, remember that. The Chitta Vrittis don't push you down, they pull you down. There's a big difference. They pull you down from below, and that is why, what pulls you down from below? A whirlpool. I talked about the lake, the water. The whirlpool in the water catches you, and before you know what has happened, you are pulled down to the bottom and you sink. This is why Swamiji's genius was to describe the Chitta Vrittis as whirlpools of the subconscious, unconscious mind. Most people, they say, the waves of the mind. It's not the same. The modulations of the mind stuff. It all sounds so innocent. It sounds so poetic and metaphoric that you just say, I love my Chitta Vrittis. I am, riding the waves of my Chitta. No, you are deluded. They catch you by your toenail and pull you down to the bottom before you can even say, help. And Ravichandran ji, it's a good way you have put it. The unconscious equivalent to vasana, subconscious to samskara. I would go along with many of these. These correlates are what yoga is all about. Finding correlates. Because the vasanas are very, very deep. So they would be very much the unconscious. Samskaras are more in the subconscious. So yes, subconscious with the samskara and the vasanas with the unconscious is a very nice correlate. Thank you for sharing that. The Chitta Vrittis are not just some waves that you are surfing. They are not on the surface. Please understand. These are not on the surface. These are right at the bottom and they are catching you and pulling you down. The Chitta Vrittis are those whirlpools that are pulling you down to the depth. Whose depth? Your own depth. The deepest, bottomless hole. That's where they are pulling you. And this is why Maharishi Patanjali tells us that Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. You need to still them. You need to transcend them. You have to fly above them. As long as you are caught up in the water, as long as you are swimming in the water, you are going to be caught by them. You have to start to walk on water and maybe even fly a few inches above it. There is a siddhi in the Vibhuti Pada that Maharishi Patanjali describes when you master Udana. Udana is the upward energy that's usually said to be in the throat. Udana Kanta Deshasto. And this Udana Jayat, he says, when you have mastery over Udana through the process of Samyama, Udana Jayat Jalapanka Utkrantischa Jalapanka Kantakadishu Utkrantischa, he says, what happens? Water, the swampy area and the thorns, you start to be able to move above them. Jalapanka Kantakadishu Utkrantischa, you are flying above them. That is a type of metaphor I am thinking for Chitta Vritti Nirodha. You have that power where you have gone above them, they cannot capture you anymore. They are clawing at you, but you are an inch above out of their reach. Imagine that metaphor. You have grown beyond the reach of the claws of the Chitta. That is where yoga starts. Because when you are caught in them, you will have no control because they are so strong. Niru, if you are talking about that Udana Jayat Siddhi, it is said that even the physical body, that is one of the Siddhis, the yogis used to move. How did they move across continents? How did they move across the country? When you think of people like Adi Shankara, how many thousands of trips across Bharata Varsha he made in that short lifespan? They were able to travel in a very different way. And so it is, the mental images of that. But here with the Chitta Vrittis, it is the mind. It is the internal aspect, the internal journey where you are transcending. Not just the physical body. It's the internal journey of the self transcending the lower self and going into the higher self. That type of journey is what we are talking here. The Vrittis have been described by Maharishi Patanjali as being fivefold. And he enumerates them as Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Smritayaha. Pramana is the cognitive process of knowing, where you gain knowledge that is apparently true. So, I look up at the sun, I see the sun is there. So I know the sun has risen today. This is a pramana. Similarly, one could be direct perception called pratyaksha. You could infer. If someone says, is it day or night? I'll say, yes, it is day. How do I know it is day? Because it is bright and the sun is up. So I am coming to a cognitive knowledge, a truth, that it is day based on other factors that I have perceived. And then the third is where all of you in different parts of the world, I say it is day here in India, and you believe me, and so you say, yes, in India it is day, because Dr. Ananda is in India. He is a reasonable human being. So if he says it is day, most probably it will be day. That is called Agama. And Agama is a very important method of cognition in the Indian culture. We have faith, trust, and we believe our teachers. We believe what tradition says, and we have faith that they knew what they were talking about. When Maharishi Patanjali says, these are the layers of Samadhi, these are the Chitta Vrittis, I don't have for a second a doubt about it. I take his word as the authority. It for me is a methodology of Pramana. So Pramana is the cognitive process. Viparyaya is where you have a mistaken cognitive process. So you see something and you think it is something else. Someone is having milk and you think they are having toddy. All these misconceptions we make. And the whole media circus is based on this misconception. They just feed the misconception. Viparyaya. Then comes Vikalpa, imagination, hallucination, where you are caught up with something which is unreal, but your mind perceives it to be real. It is unreal. It doesn't exist. A pink elephant balancing on its trunk. A pink elephant balancing on its trunk on a red ball. And now all of you are visualizing a pink elephant balancing on a ball with its trunk. You all Vikalpa. There doesn't exist a pink elephant. There is no possibility of it balancing on its trunk, and there is no red ball. But we have just visualized it. Most of the so-called yoga relaxation in the modern world today is a lot of Vikalpa. It's marketed under the name of Yoga Nidra and variants, but it's basically a lot of Vikalpa. Lot of imagination. Is nice, it's relaxing. But just understand, it's nice and relaxing. It's useful for people. But it's not Yoga Nidra. It's a lot of Vikalpa. So, Pramana, cognition, Viparyaya, misconception, Vikalpa, imagination, hallucination, delusion also comes into that. A lot of people are deluded into thinking they are the hero of the story, not knowing they are the villain. There's a lot of that also. Nidra, sleep. Now the sleep as a vritti, there are two angles. One is the fact that when you sleep, the mind is still active. When you are in the dream state, you are active with all the subconscious bringing up memories and communicating with you. There's a huge amount of what Amma would call Chitta chatter. Chitta chatter. You are having a nice Chitta chatter when you are dreaming. And then when you go beyond that into Sushupti, you are actually now communicating with the universe itself. So there is a lot of activity going on even in physical sleep. But I like to think that this is not just the physical sleep, but the fact that most people are basically sleepwalking through life. They're just sleepwalking through life, and that is a type of nidra. And there is a term, I believe it's from the French, fugue, F-U-G-U-E, fugue. And this fugue is like, you are just in that sleep state even while you're awake, and you're just going through life asleep. I think that is actually more what the Chitta Vritti is. Not just the physical sleep, but it's this caught in a state where you are just sleeping. Smriti, memory is another vritti. Now, why is memory a vritti? A memory is a vritti because there's a constant interaction. You remember I said the bottom of the lake is communicating with the water. So something in the bottom is surfacing and coming into the water. Something in the water is going and settling down. And then this comes to there, that comes to here. There's this constant interaction. Same thing with Smriti. Your memories are stored in that unconscious part. And then suddenly they come to the subconscious, and out of the blue, you have a thought about somebody who you haven't thought about for 20 years. This is the type of thing that happens. They are stored. The deep unconscious memories are there. The subconscious memories, whenever they come to the subconscious says, how do I communicate? Okay, dreams, symbols. And then it surfaces to the mind and suddenly you think about it. So, it's sort of from the base through the water to the surface. There's this constant interaction happening. And Smriti is where they are stored. It's a very deep vritti because it is the storehouse from which the memories keep on coming. And then what you're experiencing now goes into that memory. So there is that, putting something into cold storage, taking it up, heating it up, using it, then saying, oh, there's too much, put it into the fridge. This constant interaction going on, the Smriti is very much involved. Now you say, Dr. Ananda, these all sound good. They seem normal. Yes, they are normal because, see, the Chitta is not abnormal. The Chitta has been around for millennia. Your spinal cord, brainstem tendencies, the reptilian brain has been around for millennia. So it is normal. It has kept you alive. You see something, you see a tiger, you can run away. Now, if you don't see a tiger, you get eaten by it. You don't survive. So, those who could see the tiger and run away survived. Those who could see the tiger and fight the tiger and kill it, they survived. Those who didn't see the tiger got eaten by the tiger. Same thing. What is happening is that the Chitta has been around helping us to survive. So we want to cognize something. Now, when suddenly human beings came together and, they started to live together, then that Pramana was there with Pratyaksha Anumana, and then a little bit is that tradition. That is where the Agama came in. Oh, our forefathers told us this is the best time to plant. This is the best time to harvest. These are the best times to relax. All this Agama came in. And it became part of our life. We are constantly misconceiving things. And there's a very good story about how anxiety has become part of the human race. And it goes back to the time that we were walking around and there would be a bush. Now in that bush there could be a tiger. A tiger hiding in the bush. So now as a human being who's trying to survive, there are two choices we can make. One is we say, there is a bush, maybe there is a tiger in it. The second choice is, there is a bush, maybe there is no tiger in it. Okay? Bush, tiger, maybe there is a tiger in the bush, there's a bush, maybe there's no tiger in the bush. These are the two thoughts. You're walking along, you see a bush, the question comes, is there a tiger or not? Now, what are the consequences of this? If it is pramana, and there is a bush, and there is a tiger in it, you either have to run away, fight it, or get eaten by it. So what happened is, being reasonably sure that there is a tiger in the bush got you prepared. Got you prepared to either run or fight. Fight or flight was based on your perception of the tiger being in the bush. And the second one is, if you said there's no tiger and there is a tiger, you got eaten. So the short-term consequences of saying there's no tiger in the bush, the short-term consequences was you got eaten, finished. But if you thought there's a tiger in the bush, and there's a tiger in the bush, you could fight or flight it. But if you think there's a tiger in the bush and there's no tiger, you become anxious about it. Anxiety comes in. And so what happened is that we, in our evolutionary journey, for the sake of survival, we chose the Viparyaya mode. Whenever we saw a bush, we thought there's a tiger there. Please understand, it is the Viparyaya mode. When there's a bush with a tiger, it is Pramana mode. But when there's a bush and you think there's a tiger and there's no tiger, it is a Viparyaya mode. And this Viparyaya mode of constantly seeing a tiger in a bush has led to us human beings being victims of anxiety. So the anxiety became part of our normal life as a survival mechanism based basically on Viparyaya. Because the number of chances, if you look at statistically, of a tiger being in the bush were not much. But thinking there is a tiger in the bush even when you are wrong kept you alive. But the side effect was you became an anxious, nervous wreck. But you are alive. So you are a living nervous wreck. Thanks to Viparyaya. My father used to say, in those old days, there was a saber-toothed tiger, you fought it. Either you fought it, you ran away, or you became its food. Stress was solved. Nowadays, you get up in the morning, you see your partner, you see a saber-toothed tiger. You go to work, you see your boss, you see a saber-toothed tiger. You go to school, see your students. As a teacher, you see saber-toothed tigers, little saber-toothed tigers sitting there. The students see the saber-toothed tiger teacher coming in. We are seeing saber-toothed tigers everywhere, viparyaya, and this is part of the survival mechanism that has heightened the anxiety neurosis in us human beings. Vikalpa is even worse. There's no bush also. See, at least in Viparyaya there's a bush and you thought there's a tiger behind it. In Vikalpa there's no bush. You are creating your own bushes, your own tigers, and you are getting your own anxiety. Leave it to us humans to make a mess of it. We create our own bush, we create our own tiger, and we have created our own anxiety, and then we find somebody to blame. The Chitta Vrittis, Pramana Viparyaya Vikalpa Nidra Smritayaha, they are constantly keeping us caught in the claws. And we think it is normal because survival mode is the normal mode on which most people are functioning. But yoga says survival mode is not the normal mode. Survival mode should not be your default mode. That was the default mode when you were a rat. Survival mode is the default mode for a rat. Survival mode is the default mode for a squirrel. Survival mode is the default mode for a fish. Then, Dr. Ananda, what is the default mode for a human being? Living mode. The living mode should be our default, not survival mode. Because if your survival mode is your default mode, you are still caught in the claws of the Chitta, you are caught in the Vrittis, you are caught in the Abhinivesha Klesha, and you are bound. You are in bondage. And this is why, when we talk about yoga, we talk about freedom. Coming out of this, breaking the shackles, unshackling yourself, and stilling the Vrittis of the Chitta, transcending them, learning to overcome them and grow beyond them. How do you grow? You still see, because cognition is part of being human now. But what do? Don't react to what you are cognizing. Try to respond. How do you do that? Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Give a gap. Mind the gap. Gap the mind. Gap the mind. The wider this gap becomes between stimulus and response, the less the Chitta will have control over you. The lesser the gap between stimulus and response, the more overpowered you are by the Chitta and its Vrittis and the Abhinivesha Klesha. How do you enhance the gap? That is where the Vairagya. The gap is Vairagya. And to enhance it, you have to work on Abhyasa. Abhyasa has to precede Vairagya. Vairagya cannot manifest without Abhyasa. I'm going to repeat that. Vairagya cannot manifest without Abhyasa. You have to make the effort and then you have to let go. You have to pull the bowstring back and then let go for the arrow to hit the target. Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tannirodha, says Maharishi Patanjali. Through intense self-effort that is uninterrupted, that is for a higher purpose, based on firm foundation. And then the capacity to let go. Slow deep breathing is one of the most important ways you can actually have this happen. The role of slow deep breathing. I'm not even calling it pranayama yet. Because the moment you slow down your breathing, you have brought in the Buddhi, you have brought in the Ahankara. The Chitta and the Manas, their activities go down. See, as long as you are just breathing without thinking about it. All of you who are watching, how many times have you thought about your breath today? Unless you have been in a yoga class, you're not going to think about it. Unless you have been exposed to these teachings, you're not going to think about it. If you are not thinking about your breath, you are locked in the Chitta Vrittis. Because the Chitta, remember I told you the Chitta, the physical correlate is the brainstem and the spinal cord, which is keeping you breathing, which is keeping your heart beating and digesting your food, all survival mode. The moment you say, I am going to choose how I breathe, breathe out, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And then I choose to hold the breath. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Suddenly what has happened? Suddenly what has happened? The Buddhi and the Ahankara have come into play, and the Manas and the Chitta have been brought under control. Because the higher aspect, the drone and drone master are working. You are now enhancing the perspective of the drone master. You are not caught at the bottom, the sludge at the bottom of the lake. Well, I think that's enough for today. The Chitta, don't let people make it sound so nice that Chitta Vrittis are the fluctuations of the mind, the waves, and oh, we are going to go surfing and we are going to swim and have fun. Please understand. They are keeping you in bondage. Unbound yourself. Yoga unbounds you. Namaste. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you so much.